Hello and welcome, everybody. Welcome to Captivate the Mic with Elaine Williams. You are in for such a treat. I have the fabulous, powerful, and amazing Amy Castro with us today. Hi, Amy.
Hi, thank you for having me here.
Thanks for being here. And I didn't want to mess up your intro. Do you mind telling us a little bit about you?
Sure. I have been in the speaking game for, let's say, 30 years. And as I've mentioned to you before, I started when I got out of the Air Force. I basically did a little inventory of what are the things that I like to do in the Air Force, because that was my only real grown up job, and what were the things that I didn't like to do. And long story, but that's how I came to corporate trainer, corporate speaking. And so I started my business just on my own with no knowledge other than just doing some book learning in 1994, and have been doing it ever since, and hopefully fine tuning it and crafting it.
I would say yes. I would say yes. But yeah, 1994. That's amazing. We met in another sort of circle around animal rescue because we both love animals, and that's a whole other can of worms. But we were talking about how the speaking business, it's just so exciting, but it's also like any industry that gets hot, full of people who make a lot of big promises that usually I do not think are realistic or true. If you've never been on stage, I can help you get a $10,000 gig next month. It's really, Amy and I were just talking about all the things we've learned. And, Amy, what would you say if somebody's listening and maybe they're speaking some, but they want to do it more, or maybe they want to learn? What are some tidbits you could give them? We're pulling back the curtain, everybody.
Okay. The one thing I would say, and I hate to say this about and I have not always been open about things, is that speakers have a tendency, if you talk to another speaker, to be very optimistic about what's really going on. And so my first bit of advice would be cautious about listening to what other people say that they are earning, how successful they are, things like that, because the speaking game is tough. It can be a lonely business, and it's really something that 90% of the work is not the part on stage. It's the getting yourself to that stage. It's making the phone calls that nobody likes to do, the follow ups, facing rejection, and things like that. So I think. I think a huge piece of it, I think, is your belief not in how awesome you are or that your topic is cool. I want to talk about this. And I think people get sometimes very wrapped up in that. I think if you can focus on what's in it for them and what problem you solve for them, and really make that something that is your goal, it's important to you. And I'll just give you a quick example, because I used to work for a college consulting company. It was a friend's, and she was going through some issues. Her husband was ill. And I really believed in what she was doing. I thought the program was fantastic, and I really believed in what she was doing. And I could sell the heck out of that because, number one, it was something I believed in. But number two, it was somebody else's program. And I think when it comes to us as speakers, we might have one, but not the other. Like, I might really believe in what I'm doing and my knowledge base, but I may not necessarily have that selling side, or vice versa. It might be I do believe in it and I have that selling side, and I could probably sell anybody else's speaking, but when I try to do it for myself, it feels braggy or it feels salesy, and then you start second guessing yourself. So,
Yes, that is so true, Amy. Yeah, I was head trainer at a very successful, highest grossing restaurant in New York City for a long time. And then when I finally took the leap, because I had always had agents who booked me, and then learning to book myself, I was like, woo, it was a whole different animal. And
yeah.
I realized a lot of speakers, we can be hams. I love to be on stage. I love uplifting, motivating, educating, but the unsexy parts, that's been always the most challenging part of getting the bio, tweaking this, doing this, making the phone calls, doing the follow-up. I call it the unsexy parts of business.
Yeah.
And I do remember I was in Toastmasters because I grew up performing, but learning to speak as Elaine was I knew I needed some work on that. And then when I started doing the paid gigs, I felt like a piece of meat. I'll never
Mm.
forget. I felt people were just like, "Where'd you go? How did you?" And it was such a interesting and strange feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a tricky thing. I will admit I have never my I've never taken a public speaking class. I was never in Toastmasters. I was forcibly made to get up and speak in front of people against my will when I was in the military. And it was just like I said, it was that exercise of going through what did I like, did I seem to be successful at, and how can I pull that together. But I think the big thing for me was when I got my master's in human communication theory. And when I got that degree under my belt, it was like a light bulb thing about how important communication is and how much better it made my life using those techniques and how much I could make other people's lives better doing that with those techniques. So it was that strong belief that my subject matter could really have a positive impact on other people that helped me get over that other part. Toastmasters is a fantastic way to get started in speaking. National Speakers Association and the local chapters that have speakers academies, if they are good programs, active programs, you need to investigate.
Yeah.
But those are all things that I think are proportionately and appropriately priced, let's say, versus kind of you talked about the person that's going to, for $100,000, I'll make you a $10,000 a gig speaker by tomorrow kind of thing is that should
Yes.
be a huge red flag.
Beware,
It
beware,
doesn't
beware.
happen like that. They can't promise
It,
you things like that because they don't even know if you're a good speaker or if you have a good topic or you have a target industry.
and I think, I would say there's a personality type of people who are like, I love to motivate and entertain, and they need to really focus on the value. And then there's a lot of people who are the experts at something or in a niche or business but they're not the best speakers and they need to work on their communication, storytelling kind of thing.
Exactly.
And that's been my experience. And I think Toastmasters is great for many people and it can become limiting too. So I'm like,
Mhm.
take everything we say with a big grain of salt and please do research. I know I've just been like, I met this person and I really like them. And I used to just throw money around. Woo, if I learned some lessons.
Mhm.
It's
Yeah.
always okay to ask for references. And if people don't want to give them to you, that is a flag, a red flag, Amy.
Right. Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah. And, this, I think everything is going to run its course, right? It's nothing that you try has or should be anything that you're tied into for life or that you have to mortgage your home on. It's see what's out there, give it a try, see what you can gain from it, and when you stop gaining from it, you move on and try something else. The To me the big success factor is am I gaining speaking gigs and am I parlaying those speaking gigs into other speaking gigs? That's how you grow, is taking every opportunity you've been given and taking that opportunity and saying, look what I did here. I could do this for you
Right.
and work it that way. It's definitely something I didn't join, and I'm not even in NSA, National Speakers Association, right now, but I didn't join that until 2014. And I remember I
Right.
started my business in 1994. So I did everything on my own, just making it up along the way with a little bit of business knowledge and a level of comfort on stage and the subject matter expertise. And it can come just from that.
Yes, subject matter expertise. Like I experienced this one person and she is a lovely human being and right now she's super hot. Her topic is AI. She's a female business owner talking about AI. So she's on fire. Now, as a speaker, I was like, "Oh, she needs my help." I was like everyone was like, "I can't read her slides. I can't read her handout. I can't follow her." I kept thinking, oh, she needs me. I know she's gonna work it out and until she gets a coach or whatever. Amy, can you talk to us a little bit about corporate training? And can you make the distinction for people? Because I know there's motivational keynotes. Tell us a little bit about the corporate training, if you will.
To me, corporate training, you're saying to yourself, hey, I have some subject matter expertise. I'd like to make some money by being able to speak in front of people on that subject. corporate training, and corporate training to me is a big umbrella. Corporate training to me is I go out to a company and I talk to a group of their people at their either at their location or online, or they have an offsite or something like that, versus the whole other side of the business, which is I'm speaking at a conference, I'm speaking at this big event, I'm the opening keynoter, I'm the closing keynoter, I'm doing a breakout session, which is a breakout session at a conference is more like a training. It's just to a random kind of mixed group of audience. But the beauty of the corporate training, a couple of things. Number one, once you get into an organization and they like what you do, they're going to say, what else can you do?
Right.
And so you could find yourself doing programs there every month. I have had clients, big clients like NASA, as an example, Texas Children's Hospital, where something that I thought was going to be a short term, let me do a couple of workshops, turned into 14 years of pretty much monthly speaking gigs. Zip in, do your 4 hour workshop, and get out. And then you can even get much more embedded in some of that corporate training where you're really getting in and you're like I did at my work at NASA. It was the training, but it was building the training, it was identifying the needs for training. And so you're really much more of a partner. And so it gives you that nice mix of being a speaker trainer, making the speaker trainer money, but at the same time feeling like you're part of a group and a team, as opposed to cracking your eyes open in the morning and saying, what city am I in and who am I
Right.
speaking to today? And you zip in, you zip out, and you're gone, kind of thing.
I
So
love
it's
that. You know,
and
I
it's
mean,
sustainable from a geographic standpoint. I just want to
right.
make that one point, especially for people who might have children, things like that, is that for the most part, I do fly and go speaking gigs other places, but I have probably in the umpty ump years that I've been doing this, have done 98% of my speaking and training right here in the Houston area.
I love
And
it.
especially if you're near a big city, there's a lot of companies that probably need your expertise.
I love that, Amy. And how many of them, did you have to cold call, or did it snowball, or was it a lot of whoo?
Yeah. It's a lot of work. There's definitely a progression to growing to getting those clients. People don't hire you, they hire you based on your reputation. They hire you based on social proof. And so you can't just call a random company and say, "Hey, I'm a speaker trainer on this subject. Can I come speak to your group?" They're going to want to know, who have you spoken to? Like you had mentioned before,
Right.
what do they have to say about you? Another big thing that people get hung up sometimes is the industry. Like when I first broke into Texas Children's Hospital, I had never spoken in healthcare before. But you can be darn sure once I did, I went around to every hospital I could find to basically say, "Hey, I have experience training nurses and technicians on these subjects." And you parlay those experiences. But oftentimes it's going to start off with free gigs, the pro bono speaking, just to get out in front of audiences, to gain that social proof, and just to gain your own experience and test your material.
I love that. I love that so much. Thank you. And now a quick message. Are you a female business owner or a female in corporate and you know it's time to work on your speaking? You know it's time to work on your executive presence. You know it's time. You are meant for more. My name's Elaine, and I've helped hundreds of people just like you get more comfortable, more confident, and become a truly charismatic speaker. So that whenever you stand up to speak, whether it's in front of 5 people or 5,000, people lean in anticipation. When you are a charismatic speaker, you have an unfair advantage, and people can't even put their fingers on it. So if this resonates with you, if you're ready for more, you know you're meant for more, click the button below. Let's schedule a call. I'd love to chat with you and find out what you're up to, what you're committed to, what you're excited about, and see if there's a way we could possibly partner or work together. And now, back to the show. Yes, it is a lot of hustle. And I've spoken for thousands and I have spoken for free. I spoke for the Plano Chamber of Commerce Women's Division in March. And then I got all these other things because of it.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting because I'm at the point where I really want to pick and choose what I'm doing for free. I want to be in front of my ideal people. or I need to get paid. Like I'm not, I don't need, a lot of times people say, oh, you're going to get exposure. And I've been exposed.
That's my
I'm
most hated
exposed.
word. Yeah. Yeah, that's such an excellent point because, and I think a lot of times it's going to have to do with where you are in your career. But even when I was the dean of the Speakers Academy for a couple of years, I always tell people, even if you're brand new, think about who that audience is. To me, I'm not going to go out and speak for free to any group unless it meets one of two major criteria. Number one, if it's a passion organization, like any animal rescue group in Houston that said, would you come talk to our people? I'm on it.
Yeah,
I'm on it. I'm going to do it. But the only other time would be if there are people in the audience who have the potential to hire you for paid speaking. But it's too many times people will listen to the inviter who's saying, oh, it's such great exposure. To who? Even the chambers. Like, I've spoken to a lot of chambers, but I'm very selective as to what's the membership of that chamber. And
yes.
there's the Clear Lake Chamber of Commerce here outside of Houston, Texas. And there are people in there who are representatives at Boeing and Lockheed Martin and things like that. And then there are other small towns where the representatives are Mom's Pie Shop. And I love pie, but I don't think Mom's Pie Shop is going to be able to pay my speaking fees. And so I have to think about what are the, and you can ask. If somebody asks you to speak for free, say, absolutely, I do that on a limited basis. Here is my information sheet, or you can call it an application, however bold you are, and find out who their membership is and how many people they're expecting to determine if it's worth putting your makeup on or putting your clothes on that day.
I love it. Yes. I joined when I was in this big mastermind and then I joined a networking group and it was like the worst group for me.
Yeah,
It was like all men who had no desire to ever be on video. They did not want to grow their business with speaking. It was just like, and I guess sometimes I'm like, okay, what was the lesson? What was the lesson? It was like, the lesson is that you got it in a couple of months instead of hanging on for a year. So I'm
definitely.
curious, Amy, do you use storytelling when you're training? Because I was thinking of like corporate training. It's,
No, basically, what you're seeing here is who I am when I do my quote unquote corporate training. I am who I am. I approach things the exact same way as I do in a conversation or on a podcast or something like that. To me, it's the stories. That's what people are going to remember. And I always will, not always, but if there's a technique or a point I'm trying to make, I will always tie a relatable story to that. And it could be anything from, a lot of the ones that I do are personal stories. I probably break the storytelling rule. It's that they're usually things about me, my life, my experience, or, and sometimes clients. If you're really smart, you would get to know the company and the industry and dig into some of their stories and share those. But I find that, example, I teach a perception checking process. And so the example that I always use is a story about asking my daughter about emptying the dishwasher and trying to be sincere and providing positive feedback, to which she replied, are you being sarcastic? And people always laugh at that story, at the actual story, because it's something relatable when you're, because you don't praise your kids, just like you forget to praise your employees. And so when you first do, they're like, what? And so people remember that dishwasher story, things like that. So I think
that's so
it is
great.
important. That's what people, just because it's corporate training doesn't mean it has to be dry. You're talking to human beings and you're trying to get skills into their head and into their hands and into their hearts that they can use to make their lives better at work and to be more successful.
I love
And
it. I remember I did something about how to break into the corporate market, and the woman was like, "You've already been speaking to corporate colleges. Anytime you have an institution that has more than two people or whatever, it's corporate. And you've spoken to the military." And I was like, "Oh, like I had this idea that had to be like a big office building or something." And so
yeah,
funny how
the,
we,
I'm sorry. Yeah, that's true. It's organizational training. It's not necessarily corporate. And and what's so funny is that people think it's going to be super different and they like to think that their industry is super unique. But I find, after doing this for 30 something years, is that the challenge, most of the people that I speak to fall into one of two categories. They're generally going to be like, because I love dealing with frontline service customer service providers, the people that get beaten over the head
Oh
by the
man.
public on a daily. And I love to give them skills to survive that job and to maybe thrive in that job. And then the other part, the other ones, the other people that I like to work with are the middle management, because the high level big CEOs, they either know already or they don't want to hear it from me, kind of thing. They think they know it already, and there it can be hard to break into. But that middle management level, the person that I was the customer service provider and I did that for 10 years, and now I'm in charge of all the customer service providers and I have no idea what I'm
What I'm
doing.
doing. Yeah.
And I love helping those folks. And so I think being able to hone in on that passion for a particular audience or particular subject is kind of helps keep me going.
I love that. I'm a huge fan of acknowledgement and appreciation because we all need it. Nobody does it, right?
Mhm.
I'll never forget. I was with a friend at Macy's in New York, and he was shopping for a wedding that we were going to. And this person was going above and beyond. They were just awesome. They were like, try this. They were bringing all these things. They were like so amazing. And I said, I want to tell your manager. And I asked the manager to come over, and you could tell the manager was like,
Okay.
they
Dreading
were
it, right?
so used to getting screamed at by crazy New Yorkers. And I was like, I just want you to know this person is amazing and they've gone above and beyond. And I just wanted to acknowledge and appreciate both of you. And you could tell they were like, and it made me sad, but also happy to do that. But yeah, I wish we did that more. I wish we did
Yeah.
that more.
Sure.
Amy, another question. What do you think is a pitfall that speakers fall into? I know one of them is people will go on and on about their own story when they're doing like a motivational thing. Don't fall in love with your own story too much. Is there something else along the lines that you could tell people to watch out for?
I mean, I will admit I'm not a motivational speaker, so I can't speak to major pitfalls there, but you're right. I think that's just a pitfall in general, is that people think that because they had a certain experience, that's going to parlay. I had a car accident and I lost my hand, God forbid. And so therefore, that's going to be the basis of everything. But the reality is there are people that have lost all of their limbs that are out there speaking. And so it's like people's stories are worse, people's experiences are worse, better, whatever it might be. So I think that is a good point, is don't get so hung up into it and just the story, but what is the point of the story? What are the
Right.
lessons that other people can take from that is a huge thing. I think there's so many pitfalls that you fall into as a speaker. Unfortunately, imposter syndrome is a big one. I still struggle with that after all of this time. It's like,
After 30 years.
who am
That's
I to call
amazing.
them and say that I can do this, or who am I to charge that amount of money or whatever it might be? And so you really have to work through that. That you mentioned, we talked about the free speaking, the exposure. You can run around chasing your tail with free speaking gigs, and at some point you got to buy the peanut butter and jelly. You
I
don't want
love
to you don't
that,
want to fall
Amy.
into that pitfall.
Such a great point too. Is I've had so many people because my story's dramatic, three addictions, assault, domestic violence, like everything except heroin and fentanyl, really. But I tell people, go, oh, my story's, I don't really have it. And I'm like, you have a story. It may not be as dramatic, but it's the human experience. Did you feel broken, isolated, down, that thing? And it's all about being able to identify.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it's also being able to identify where is that story, who needs to hear that story. That's the other thing. I talk often about in for speakers to have a niche. I believe in this thing called a niche triad. I actually trademarked it, but it's you can the more specialized you get, the better off you're going to be. So therefore, your topic is one element that you can niche in on. The people that you speak to, like I mentioned before, frontline customer service providers, middle level managers in government or something like that. And then the industry is the other thing. Are you a healthcare speaker? Are you a government speaker, a college speaker, like you mentioned before? And if you can get all three of those, that's great. But I think too many times people don't have any of those. And so this is what I talk about, this one thing. And then I go out and try to market it to everybody under the sun. And not everybody wants or needs that. And then you wonder why you're banging your head against the wall. You've really got to hone in on number one, who needs to hear that message, And then probably the even bigger question is who's going to pay me to share that message with their employees if you want to make money in speaking?
And bottom line, it's got to produce more money, less time. There needs to be some tangible results and social proof and stuff. I love
Exactly.
that, Amy. I think a lot of times people are, this is my experience, people are afraid to niche. And I always tell my clients, look, just because you're marketing to one specific thing doesn't mean you can still help all these people. You meet
Mm-hmm.
somebody at the board or chamber or wherever, you can absolutely still coach them and work with them. We're
Oh,
just
yeah.
focusing on the marketing.
Yep.
And so I think that's an important thing to underline an exclamation.
If 100%, I said it before, I said it in passing, but once a client likes you, they're going to say, what else can you do for us?
What else you
And
got?
so
Right.
that's the point that you can expand on. And think about it. I think I gave this example to you the other day about the restaurant. It's, are you going to go to Angelo's New York Pizza and Pasta, or are you going to go to Bob's Chinese Thai Pizza Seafood Restaurant? It's like, how could you possibly make all that food really well?
It makes
Or,
me so nervous just thinking
I
about
know.
it.
It's like the everything under the sun we're great at, the 50-page menu. And it's the same thing. Example I give in my niche triad training is if you had a brain tumor, do you want to go to a general surgeon who's done 400 surgeries? Or do you want to go to a brain surgeon who's done 400 surgeries, specifically removing glioblastomas like yours?
Yeah,
Obviously, you want the expert. Nobody wants the jack of all trades, master of none.
nothing. Yeah. Even though that's one of my jokes, but Amy, I just love it. You're so grounded. I love your passion for animals. And if people want to know more about you, maybe they're looking for a trainer or a coach, how can they find you?
The easiest place is amycastro.com on my website. You can find me there, find out more about me there with the types of things that I do, and contact me from there.
I love
Or
it.
or you can email at amy@amycastro.com
Okay,
if you just want to
cool. And
pop in.
anything exciting coming up in the summer? Any new projects or
My biggest project right now is big, but I'm
move?
trying to predict ahead where I'm going and already doing some outreach in those areas to so I'm not a complete stranger and starting from scratch when I move my speaking business. Although it is I like to do online things like our conversation, but doing online training. So that's a nice option to be not necessarily hopping on planes, but still being able to have reach beyond just the Houston area. But I'm pretty embedded here, so I'm trying to spread my wings out a little bit and head towards my general direction at least of where I'm going.
East Coast, baby. Yeah.
Yep.
I'm so excited for you. Awesome. Thank you so much, Amy Castro. Once again, if you want to find out more about her or talk to her about her amazing corporate training, amycastro.com, amycastro.com. Thanks everybody for watching, and we'll see you next time.